Chapter 6. Incorporation. Let an event have taken place, it will, as such, have vanished for the transcendental pathology constituted by the coming to appearance's surface of its basis in being. A multiple subjected to the evaluation of its elements in terms of their identity is incapable of setting in or of lasting. All that remains are its consequences, among which is that defining the evental value of the sight, namely, the raising up of its inexistent element, which passes from the minimal or nil degree to the maximal one. Every truth is dependent upon something whose existence had been totally unapparent, acceding to the flesh of appearance in politics, ancient slaves, or contemporary proletariats. In art, that which had been without any formal value suddenly finding itself transfigured by an unforeseeable shift of the boundary, demarcating what is recognized as form, even when deformed, from what is relegated to formlessness. In love, at every fracturing of the solidity of the one by an improbable and long-denied two that experiments with the world on its own account and dedicates itself to the infinity of this experimentation. In science, the submission to the letter of mathematics of a whole span of material or vital qualities that had seemed to be its contrary, with the proper names linked to these upsurges being Spartacus or Lenin, Aeschylus or Nicholas de Stael, Heloise and Abelard, just like Edith Piaf and Marcel Cerdan, Archimedes or Galileo. We are going to name the inexistent of a previous state of the world that finds itself raised up or elevated to the maximal power of appearing by the evental mutation, a primordial statement. This is not because it's necessarily a matter of something said, but because the term in question is equivalent to a sort of commandment. It says to us, from the heights of the authority granted it, by its having been raised up, see what is coming to pass, and not only what is. Work for the consequences of the new. Accept the discipline appropriate to these consequences becoming. Make of the whole multiple you are, bodies within a body, the ineffaceable matter of the true. These material imperatives declare to us things such as workers of the world unite, Marx. The world is written in the language of mathematics, Galileo. A throw of the dice will never abolish chance, Mallarmé. Or love is a thought, Pessoa. Initiated by the primordial statement, a new body forms in the world that will be the body of truth or a subjectivizable body, in which we will often, when the context is clear, simply call body. How is this body formed? This depends on the affinities between the other bodies of the world and the primordial statement. The latter is the rallying point for the multiples that become involved in the process of unfurling the consequences of the event, with these consequences having both their concentrated source and the justification of their novelty in this statement. Think of the leftists forming, up until roughly the end of the 70s, the innumerable and heterogeneous group of those faithful to May 68. Think of the lovers brought into the world by the transporting effects of that I love you that affixes in a primordial statement the fleetingness of an encounter. Picture the artistic and worldly asceticism of the great students and disciples of Schoenberg, Berg, and Webern after the dodecaphonic turn of the first decade of the 20th century. Or again, note the bedazzlement with which French mathematicians in the 1930s were to discover the radical innovation of modern algebra, born by the inventions of the German school, Emmy Noether, first of all. Thousands of other examples show what it entails. For an individual rallied by the authority of a primordial statement to declare him or herself, body and soul, on the side of this statement, and a confirmed volunteer for the incorporatee, and reiterated encore, unfurling of its effects. For this process consists of the adjunction to a body in the making, of everything that tests out an essential affinity with what this body unfurls by way of the consequences of the statement, and hence of the event that, like a bolt of lightning, was to strike the laws of appearing at a precise point. This is why the appropriate name for this process is incorporation. Incorporation can be formalized by using the most intricate details of the logic of appearing. This task is carried out in Logics of Worlds, particularly in Book 7, which contains the theory of the body of truth, but it presupposes all the refinements of the great logic, explained notably in Book 3. Here we are simply going to describe what is at stake, what is meant by an affinity between some body or other and the primordial statement that is the trace of an event in a world. The rudiments of the theory of appearing set out in chapters 3 and 4 of this book are all we need to understand this. The statement, the raising up of an inexistent, is from then on a multiple that appears in the world with a maximal value. Thus, the primordial statement of a love, that I love you, of the aptly named declarations of love, exists in the subjective world of lovers, or future lovers, with an intensity that nothing else can surpass. Consider, as a result, any multiple whatsoever of the world concerned, for example, the pleasure one of the lovers takes in walks along the beach. This element will be said to incorporate itself within the body of amorous truth in the process of constituting itself if its relation of identity to the primordial statement is measured by the highest possible degree. In practical terms, what this means, of course, is that the lover in question wants to get the other to come along on walks of this kind, to include them in his or her passion for deserted beaches, to reevaluate his or her love of the sea's murmuring from the standpoint of love and nothing else, and so on. Put formally, this means that the degree of identity between the datum, pleasure in walks along the beach, and the primordial statement of love cannot be less than the degree of existence accruing to this pleasure. The meaning, therefore, is clear. Henceforth, a personal effect can only enter into the composition of the body of love if its identity to the amorous, primordial statement is not smaller than its own intensity, or if it can be composed with the love without losing any of its force. It then enriches the body of love, which is to say that it enters into the process of a truth. The seashore, as a fragment of appearing, is reevaluated from the point of the two and is no longer immured in narcissistic enjoyment of the world. This empirical picture is reinforced by formal analysis, which indeed demonstrates that if a multiple of the world appears with a maximal intensity of existence, as is the case by definition for every primordial statement, the relation of identity that any multiple whatsoever appearing in the same world has with this first multiple cannot be of a greater degree than that of the existence of the second multiple. The degree of identity of any multiple with a primordial statement is at most equal to the degree of existence of the multiple concerned. If it is equal, then it is as high as it can be. Its relation of identity with the primordial statement is maximal. This is what is denoted by its profound affinity with the statement. We will then say that a multiple of the world is incorporated within a truth process, or becomes a component of the body of this truth, if its degree of identity to the primordial statement is maximal. Such is the case of the young leftist, who is carried beyond herself by her adhesion, without limits, to the effects of the event May 68, the primordial statement of which might be said to be, let's reinvent politics. So too is it the case of the pleasure the lover takes in walks along the beach when these strolls become, under the injunction of I love you, ecstatic moments of the love itself. Incorporating yourself within a truth's becoming consists in bringing to the body, serving as the support of this truth, everything within you that has an intensity comparable to what it is that allows you to identify with the primordial statement qua the stigmata of the event in which the body has its source. Unable to enter into details here, I would but finally note that a truth process is the construction of a new body that appears gradually in the world, as all the multiples having an authentic affinity with a primordial statement are drawn together around the latter. And as the primordial statement is the trace of an event's power, we can also say that a body of truth results from the incorporation within the consequences of an event of everything within the world that has been maximally impacted by its power. A truth is, then, an event having vanished whose unforeseeable body the world causes to appear little by little in appearing's disparate materials.